Often we've talked about how the true insight into reality is unperceivable. This unperceivability, if you take it to be very literally and not let it hide behind the big word unperceivable, we're actually saying that it's invisible. It's invisible. So, the starting point of spirituality is a big absurdity about coming to the discovery of that which in worldly ways can never be found. Can never be found. So recognize the invisible is the project in some way. How can we do that? So if you're going to construct or find or discover the temple of God in our heart, we have to deal with a few things which in a worldly way, in the mental way, are completely absurd. And that is why those who don't yet seem to have a longing for this will get put off by the absurdity of it. And some of you have already started participating in the Heart Temple movement, which the notion of which arose from here. And some of you must be already tasting that it's very difficult to get through to people to talk about that which is very natural for us being in Satsang, but seems completely strange to the world. So if we say that to recognize the self is the most important job that we have, and then if we say that but to recognize it is not really possible because the self is invisible, I can imagine how that sounds like to those who are yet not in the insight which is available intuitively. But really, if our life is going to be a true temple of God, which I feel really, if there is a purpose to our life, it can only be that. Then we have to find, to begin with, that which is unperceivable, therefore in a worldly way invisible. And we cannot determine the finding of it or the non-finding of it through its byproducts or side effects. So if this was our first satsang, which in some sense it can feel like, and I was to ask, have we come to the insight of that which is invisible to our senses? What would we say? So the first pillar of our life, becoming a temple of God, and whether we like it or not, that is what our life is meant to be. In this we don't have a choice. Some of you may be hearing this term for the first time and you may be saying, I don't want my life to be a temple of God, I have other plans. But if the purpose of human birth or the human condition can be put into words, which really it can't, then these are the words which seem to come the closest to us being able to define the purpose. Which is that our life must become an extension of God's light. And in that way, our life must be a reflection of His presence. Because there is nobody else here that we can put into our heart altar. So egotism is basically to take a non-existent entity and dedicate our life as a temple to that non-existent one. And spirituality is to take the only existent being and to dedicate our life to that one, to Him. So the brand of so-called spirituality which has me at the center of it, and me in our temple, that cannot be called spirituality at all. We've taken a me help, like a self-help thing, and with the machinations of the mind, converted that into a very convenient spirituality. So either way, it is about me. Have you seen that for most of the world, if it is a worldly life, it is about me, but it's about money, power, fame, relationships, materialistic accomplishments. And if it is about spirituality, it is my spiritual progress, my realization, my freedom, me. So at both ends, it is me. And it is no wonder then that most of us, even coming into spirituality, really don't recognize that that is not the true endeavor of spirituality. So, really the question to ask, and I don't remember, but probably Radha sent this bhajan where she said, "Who is in my temple?" Who am I serving right now? Who is this about? So maybe even before we can take the absurd step of dedicating our life to an unperceivable insight, you just start with the absurdity of emptying the space, make room for God. Because nobody who embarks on the endeavor really starts with the insight that God is already in our heart. So that has to be a leap of faith already. Saying that I don't know how things are going to turn out, but I have to start by becoming empty of the me to make room in my life for reality. You can't even say for the greater one. Because greater in comparison to what? How much bigger than this is this hand? Cannot compare. So in the same way, how much greater is God than ego? Cannot compare because the ego does not exist. It's just a belief system. So to empty ourselves to avidya, to empty ourselves from false notions of me, is the starting point as well as the lifelong endeavor. Even after so-called awakening, even after so-called enlightenment. That is why even Papaji said, vigilance till my dying breath, which he reminded me actually. So who are we serving at this moment? What is our life about right now? What do we want? So, full of grasping, full of desire, full of attaching to things, all that is going to be shared in terms of true spirituality will seem too difficult, too far out, and too absurd, both in terms of what the discovery is, as well as the way of life that is going to be offered. Is going to sound too strange if we continue to take ourselves to be this body made of mud, and we take the proposals of the mind to be reality. Then true spirituality will seem too far out. So start by just becoming empty of the false. Return to an innocence which is there within you, where you don't know much, but you're here. You don't know much, or better, nothing at all, but you're here. So in the last few days, if you picked up a lot of spiritual ideas or knowledge, empty, empty, empty. It can happen when we take a break from satsang. Yeah. Just return to the sheer innocence of an infant. And just be here. Just that much, by the grace of the presence in Satsang, is very helpful. So if our life is going to be a temple of God, but there's already a movie theater there, or a drama company at least, then we have to first demolish that. So just empty yourself of whatever constructs we may have in our life. And naturally you may find that your presence is already starting to shine through. Already the absurdity may begin. So let's start from this point. We are empty of conceptual ideas, but that we are here, that we are, is undeniable. Yes? So, if I ask you a very simple question, and it is very simple if you don't give it to the mind, and I just ask you who is aware of this amness or here-ness? What would you say? Who is aware of that? Let's call it something, although it is furthest from something. Something is aware of that? Or no? Now, that knowledge that you are, the presence is here, is it second hand or is it direct? Direct. It is opposed to the kind of knowledge where if I say the world is spherical, the earth is spherical, you heard it or you've seen a photograph of it, which you may take to be true. So let's put that learned knowledge in the category of second hand. That you are you aware of that first hand or second hand? Everyone? Or is it just because you've heard it in satsang and everyone talks about it? Well, everyone in this type of satsang at least. No, you're not confirming your presence based on something that you learned. You're aware of it directly. So the question is very simple. Are you here now? You're here. So that which is present, you are aware of it, or you just heard about it. You're aware of it. Now this you that is aware, what can we say about that? What color is it? With me? What is its color? Doesn't have color? Huh? Pakka? Very good. Okay, so it doesn't have color. What about its shape? Doesn't have shape. But how can that be? The mind will come and say that you're fooling yourself. There is no such thing. Colorless, shapeless. Because everything should have shape. Everything should have color. What do you say? Any quality you can say, any attribute to this I that is aware. What are you finding? Not thinking. Just be careful not to think. But like thoughts can come and go, but don't bother with them. What are you finding? You are aware. This you, tell me one attribute which is true about it. Don't think. It's fine. Always there. Is it? Always there. How can we say such a thing? Are you always there? You were born, no? You're going to die. So when we say always there, are we talking about limited between birth and death? No. So already absurd insights are coming, which are timeless. You're saying that it doesn't have color, shape, or size, but you can tell that it's always there. A scientist will say, show it to me, prove it to me empirically. On what basis are you saying? You cannot prove the basis like that. If I say, how do you know? You say, I just know. And be careful not to jump into what does this mean? Because what does this mean actually means what does this mean for me? Am I finding it? No, you're not. Am I doing this correctly? No, absolutely wrong. But keep going like that. Just let go of all of this blackmail from the mind. It is not going to help you along the way. On this path, you cannot check with these traditional instruments. Now, some of your minds are already taking you into trouble, into a tizzy, because they are saying, but I cannot confirm that it's always there. Isn't it? I cannot confirm it's always there. I can just confirm that I am aware. Okay, so you don't rush. Already you're saying that there is an I which doesn't have a quality, shape, size, color. Because you are aware, no? Tell me something which is true for you, for this I. Is this I touched by anything that may happen in perception? Can it be hurt? Can it improve? Can it make progress? Even for progress, you need at least one quality, isn't it? That has to improve. It needs to have at least one color, one shade, which is a light red, you want it to become a bright red. You may call that progress, isn't it? But here you're not finding any quality. And that awareness itself, which is aware even of perception, you can immediately tell that it cannot have a better or worse. Can this awareness become better?
Father, is it powerful?
Is it?
Is it powerful? Is that an
Powerful.
attribute?
Powerful in what way?
In a sense that...
Does it have muscles?
No.
It doesn't have muscles. No? Then how is it powerful?
That it can just
What can it do? I would say it is all powerful, but not in the way that we can conceptualize. Because at one level it's just a sheer witnessing. See? Where is the notion of power there? It's just witnessing. But either intuitively or just even rationally, we are bound to conclude its power because we notice that this is all there is. And if this is all there is, then all that is perceived must also come from there. All that is perceived, that we call the universe or the world, must also come from there. But if it is just a conceptual, inferred conclusion, then it cannot be resolved. But if we allow it to just remain intuitive, then we may say Purnamadam Purnamidam. From the wholeness, a whole arises. That's supreme power, no? If you are that from which an infinity can arise, and yet you remain untouched. That is the crux of it, isn't it? That from a whole, WHOLE, a wholeness arises, and yet the initial remains untouched, unchanged. Why this is so important is because it is completely contrary to worldly law. If you have some potential energy, you were talking about it. If you have some potential energy and that translates into manifest or expressed energy, then what happens to the potential? It depletes. So the spring has potential energy when it is squeezed like that, but when it's let go, it expresses itself in movement and the potential energy is gone. But the self is that powerful that from itself, this whole universe, an infinite universe in infinite time and infinite space arises, and yet it remains untouched. And sages said this thousands of years ago. You see? How was it known? In the same way that he said it is always there, just intuitively. So, because power is such a limiting word, which is a worldly construct, it doesn't really, and none of the worldly constructs truly 100% apply to reality. When we meet its power or its intelligence or its love, or its peace, or its joy, intuitively, and don't try to understand it mentally, then we can come to its true recognition, its true darshan. But if you try to understand it, saying, but it is literally no thing, it has no attribute, so how can it be powerful? And powerful to the extent that all emerges from that. And yet it remains untouched. Does it come close to answering your question? I asked me. Yes.
Father, in the sense that when I say powerful, it's like the outer circumstances or whatever it is, it overcomes that. Meaning, it with that, when you're there, all that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I don't know how to explain, Father.
Actually, we realize that it's not that it stops mattering because of that. We realize in the insight about that our reality is that it never really mattered. We had taken something which was just a dance of light and sound, and we had taken that to be meaningful to that which is the unperceivable reality of ourselves. That is the power of belief of avidya. To believe that, to take that which is not true about ourselves, to be true about ourselves, which means that we take ourselves to be the wrong self to start with, in the misbelief, in the avidya, and then all kind of nonsense is true. When we come to a true insight about who we are, we recognize that nothing can hurt me, nothing can cut me, nothing can burn me. As Sri Krishna said in the Gita, that I cannot be hurt. So of course, at a worldly level, also it is helpful because you feel that you have a refuge from the world. You stay in the Sadguru's presence, and that which seemed to be so oppressive in the world now doesn't seem to matter. It seems that circumstances themselves change. I was saying the other day that we presume that God can help only in the future, but God can also change the past, which we can know only intuitively. Like in your mind, the past is already going too far with this stuff, probably. Okay, let's stick to the basics. So, so yes. So that I, which is aware of presence, is that visible or invisible? It is silent. It is invisible yet recognized. Huh? Invisible yet recognized. So either all of us are crazy, or we are discovering something which is not commonly seen like this in the world. That there is an I which is a sheer witnessing, is a sheer awareness. But I know it not because I can see it, but just because somewhere I know it. And this somewhere where I know it is not my usual house. My usual house is where I know things because I've learned them. But I have to leave that house, become empty of that, and then I can recognize this traditionally it was said that this kind of knowledge, Brahma Vidya, Brahma Gyan, is very, very rare. I've spoken to some traditional spiritual teachers and they said, why are you doing the Ashtavakra? This is not for everyone. Very few will actually get it. And maybe it is true, but it doesn't seem to be true in the world that shows up in front of me. I feel like it is fairly straightforward actually. But it needs an innocence, needs an openness. So maybe God sends me those who are innocent or pure-hearted or open. Because I look at each of you and I don't feel like it is difficult for any of you. So maybe that itself is a mind trick which has made the most simple knowledge. You see? Like one of the defenses being, but no point going there because who's going to get it anyway? You see? But the treasure which is hidden in plain sight, you see, then that becomes a mental deflection. Don't look for it because you'll never find it anyway. But actually, if you're not so caught up in your ego, in yourself, then what I'm saying is very simple. How could you do this wrong? You could do this wrong by saying, I'm saying, are you here? And you're just thinking, yeah, of course, what kind of stupid question is that? Of course, I'm here. So you're not checking, you're just thinking. So that is one way to do it wrong. Kya pooch raha hai? Of course. I'm here. Now what do you want? Then I'm like, who's aware of this here-ness? I only must be, no. But outwardly you're just like, ah. So that is the way you could be doing this mentally, but I don't see that in your eyes. So either you're acting very well or it is not as difficult as it's made out to be. Are you just doing it like that? Inside you're just like, he's going to say, I am aware. Yeah? It's like that kind of process, or it's just, I can check. Right now I can check. Who is aware of this present? I am. And I'm not expecting, of course, that your mind is all shut up and following quietly. It must be resisting, it must be deflecting, it must be giving you false goals and ideas of enlightenment and progress, and all of that may be happening. But the sheer looking, the simplicity of that looking is quite straightforward actually. Then a question which may grab you is to say, but who is this one? I don't know whether it's I. This is a common one, no? I don't know. He is saying it is I which is aware. I can't confirm that. So try to not take it as you. You don't be aware. Let something else be aware. Can you do it? Like someone else, let that other thing be aware of presence. You don't be. Try to not be aware. So don't try to find it, try to lose it. Be unaware. Yes? Can you do it? No, it is you. You can't help it. Anyone needs more time with this? We can pause here if you want. Because this trips many of you up, I think. Just we can confirm to ourselves that you're not perceiving this I, you're not finding it through perception, and that it is not just a product of your thinking or intellect. Yes? The one that is aware of the perception of this hand, you're not perceiving, isn't it? Not perceiving. Anyone perceiving it? With me? Yes. Anyone perceiving that one which is aware of the hand? No. You're not perceiving it, and you're not just thinking about it. It is apparent to you that you are aware. How it is apparent is impossible for the mind to fathom. It just is. So this unperceivable reality is the non-space space for the altar to be constructed. Don't worry if the words are confusing. It is there's a beautiful bhajan which says Tumre Bhavan mein Jyot Jage. It's in the movie Delhi 6. So what is that bhavan, the hall? Even Guruji uses the word bhavan because Papaji used to have satsang and satsang bhavan. So bhavan is basically the hall in which. So in the bhajan it is said that in your bhavan does the light emerge. So what is that hall? The hall is this unperceivable reality, which can be the birthing ground for even the light of consciousness. That cannot be worldly. Consciousness is the light of the whole universe. So what can be the birthing ground for consciousness itself? It cannot be worldly. So it is this awareness itself, this pure innocence, in which the light of being, in the light of God, in the light of consciousness, which can emerge. Now you realize the value of emptiness? Because come to the discovery of this self, it seems so simple, but try to take yourself to be something or have some notion of wanting something or grasping something while you're at it and see what happens. I want the best partner in the world. Keep that idea with you and then ask yourself who is aware of your presence. You see that one of them has to go. This is the play of Maya. The ability to distract ourselves from reality is Maya. And ultimately for God, even that is an ability. That's why I'm calling it an ability. It is the greatest trickster, but God has given himself the ability to trick himself. And it's not a one-time thing. So don't believe that, oh, you've come to the recognition of this awareness as yourself. Now some bomb has gone off and it's done. You see? No, it's moment to moment. Although in the byproducts of us coming to it, you may find spiritual experiences, some outer things happening. And many times I've said that it's maybe better that none of that happens, because we get attached to those things. You see, if it is very sober and just simple, maybe that is best. You don't get attached to any of the spiritual experiences that may be the byproduct. So now we're delving deeper into the value of being conceptually empty. Simply we are going to look at who is aware of the perception of this hand and try to grasp a thought at the same time. What happens? Who can really go slow motion in this and look at it and tell me what happens?
Seems like you're watching two things. One, your perception of the hand and your perception of the thought. And really hold both at the same time.
Now, try to go further, and you're beautifully starting where you're saying that attention is limited. You see, so it seems to go here, then it seems to come back here. So that's what's happening with attention. And yet, in the movement of attention, the misidentification has not yet come, isn't it? Because your attention may be like that. It doesn't matter whether it's hand or thought, if it is just attention. With me? Doesn't matter whether it's hand or thought, if it is just about attention, because both are perceived. You see? So, but what happens when you buy into the thought? When you believe the thought, and you exert the second primal power that you have, the first being attention, the second being belief. What happens when you believe the thought? Till then, the fact that you are awareness is apparent still, isn't it? Till that point, you have not been shaken from your reality. But once you believe an idea, what happens? So the experiment is to try and believe an idea, and in that moment, not lose who you are. You can do this. Experimented with it? I would really encourage this experiment. Although the solution is obviously you are aware what is coming, but then you lose that emptiness and fill, you see, the space within you with the belief in a thought. Then it seems like the insight which was so simple gets clouded, seems to get lost. And nobody so far has been able to hold on to ignorance, avidya, and to self-knowledge at the same time. And that is why the mind is constantly at work. It has to constantly give you things to believe. So you keep filling yourself up with these notions, and then reality seems so distant. And that is why we can say the reality of who you are Brahman itself is who you are, seems to have become the rarest knowledge possible in this world. Huh? When you believe the thought, you feel that you are the body. You see, because that is the locus of the identity, isn't it? It needs a central point. If it's going to take itself to be worldly, then everything in the world has a body, isn't it? Has a shape. Everything. Like if this is in the world, then it has to have a shape. It has to have a body. So when you buy into the idea, you buy into a shape for yourself. But the reverse is also true. That if you do not buy into any idea, you cannot take a shape for yourself. Can you experiment now like that? Let all thoughts go. Tell me what is your shape. Possible? Not possible to take yourself to be limited unless you're buying an idea. That is why when I felt it came to me in Satsang many years back to say, all you have to do is not believe your next thought. I feel like it's game over. Yeah. Like, how is it? Nobody said this before. Stupid, arrogant child that I was. So I'm sure many have said it before, but I just felt like I'm just going to tell everyone. All you have to do is not believe your next thought and finish. Everyone will just follow. We're done. No? Only the mind was that simple. Thoughts about not believing thoughts were believed. Thoughts about believing thoughts were believed. So we clearly, at least I clearly underestimated the nemesis.
That's what he was trying to explain about this. I realized it couldn't even see that this was only a thought.
Yeah.
And it didn't seem to them it was a thought. It seemed to them, that's me. What is
That's
she
you,
talking about?
exactly.
What are you talking about? But it's, that's, no, it's,
See?
thought. We didn't realize that, only now because they kind of trained us to see it.
The whole idea of the Heart Temple movement is so all of you can empathize with me. But don't you see it's a thought? What do you mean by thought? It's me. What else you got? Like that. So, hopefully you're noticing that to be fooled by Maya, to be fooled, to take yourself to be limited, it is not possible without the thought arising, therefore you're noticing it with your attention and you're taking it to be true, therefore exerting your belief on this thought which is getting your attention. Without that, you remain in pure perception and you remain open and empty. As Guruji has been saying recently, you just remain as a detached witnessing.
I'll just take an example from work. I'm just trying to play it out in terms of what you're saying.
Yeah.
So you come back after 2 weeks out, and there's always a lot of stuff happening. So you get into this back and forth on a bunch of things, and you feel your irritation rise, and you're getting into an argument with somebody, which always happens. And like you're saying, there is this I and the other awareness, and it's almost like optometrist, you put a lens in and out, and you can switch out into the other one. And suddenly you just hear sounds and a bunch of people sitting there. You're aware of everything, but you can hear the voice, you can even hear the question, but every thought I have is a function of something that's happened in the past, or a fear or a joy of what's going to happen in the future. But to answer somebody's question, I can hear everything, right? You have to go into the I, and that to answer the question, new thoughts arise. So, and then your mind gets into, no, you be in the other eye, you be in this eye. And, you're getting, now you're lost already. You're getting into this loop, right? You follow what I'm saying? So I'm asking whether, is it possible to remain in daily life and answer a question from somebody, often in the heat of the moment, and not be in the I you think you are, and be on the other side? And it was quite challenging.
Yeah. It's definitely possible, but what can happen is that with an answer like that, the mind may give you more trouble. Others saying, it's possible, why can't I do it? You see, in others in Satsang also nodding. So the mind will make that a benchmark. So let's start with, okay, so there was a heated argument at work, and someone pushes your buttons, all of that, and you got caught up in the mind. What about the rest of the 98% of the time where that heat was not there? Let's start with that.
I think the pendulum swings are a lot less.
So start like that. Treat those moments as write-offs, because the mind will want us to dwell on that even when it's over. That's what I call the 1-2 punch from the mind, because the one punch is maybe a few minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, half an hour. You have a difficult meeting and it's contentious and all of that. But what about the remaining 15.5 hours of the waking state? And if that is all right, that's okay. Start like that. Start like that. But what the mind will want you to do is spend the remaining 15.5 hours thinking about that half an hour, especially once you come into spirituality. So once you know like that, it will try to use this itself to block you more and more. And this is why I used to say often that my biggest nemesis is the checker guy, who now knows, has also heard the words of Satsang. So no, don't believe your thoughts, don't do that. So then it comes, even when the situation is long gone. You see, earlier, this problem was not there, because you were like, this is how it is, he's the bad guy, I fought with him, yes, fine. So you can see now, but after coming into spirituality and Satsang, there's that provisional period where the mind will try to use the concepts of Satsang itself to oppress us even more. And that is the checker guy, which means that it uses what it hears in Satsang and makes it an oppressive checking from the mind itself, saying you were meant to be empty, but you are not empty. But we don't recognize that that conclusion is keeping us from being empty now. So if happen, over. You're not going to spiritually beat yourself up, say I did wrong, how can I fix that? Okay, but now that situation is not there. Can you be empty now? So start like that. Then what happens is, as you allow the rest of your life to deepen in this, then you'll see that it starts to seep in the most difficult situations as well. You start to see that once you're not falling for the trap of the checker guy, then because you're so much open, at ease in the rest of your life, it will seep into the most difficult situations as well. But if you allow the rest of your life then to be oppressed by the fact that you're not able to do it well enough in those cases, then it has the reverse sort of effect. So just write off some things in the past. We just have to write off. If you keep dwelling on them, it doesn't help.
So, okay, a little continuation. There is no other, but there is other.
Yeah.
Because there is no other.
Yeah.
But like in a daily life, the other is the mind. What if that is my own or the other mind? It's the same, no?
Yeah.
So here, to be so clear and to just remain my own, my personal one or the other one, it doesn't matter. It's the same, no? The same.
Yes.
So that
But is this
the
other one always with you? In the sense that I completely hear what you're saying. So there comes a time where we feel like we can just be open and empty with the mind that comes from here, the thoughts. But the thoughts that seem to come from there, we're not able to be empty about them for some time. But thankfully, mostly, we're not always around that other. Okay? So that's why I'm telling him also that make use of the space that life has given you, empty of that situation. And are you fully empty of your mind then? That much is good enough. And as that deepens, as it becomes more and more natural, then you will find that whether you are in those situations of the other or not, it doesn't seem to have the same bite that it used to. But don't necessarily focus on those situations where there is another or there's some trouble happening. Can we make sure that we are empty at least the rest of the time? Because the mind will want to fix that, but you're not able to be empty when that is happening.
so here I'm like I'm keep okay, the checker guys keep checking and then it gets
Don't let the checker guy out first.
yeah.
Don't use that spiritual knowledge, which is true, that there are no others.
But then there is an other.
There are no others, but the other is just like
Exactly.
wrong. There are no other. It's worse than before then. No?
Yes.
It's worse than before you came to Satsang. Because earlier there was like, there is another, I'm going to fight with them, I'm going to tell them I'm right and it's over. Yeah, but now there is no other also. It feels like another. You see, it seems much more difficult. So just be empty as much as you can. And in those moments where you can't be empty, then when those situations are over, then don't dwell on them. Return to your emptiness as fast as you can. Return to your emptiness as fast as you can instead of thinking about what you should have done in those situations.
But you see, in my case, like this is why I quite live like in solitude, because this is the only way that I actually feel empty. Because I go and I move around and it feels everything is moving inside.
Yeah.
But then I'm going, it should be same, or there or here, everywhere. So I'm keep like, because it's not it's false in a way, and I'm aware of it, but yet I cannot, like I get too exhausted if I am around.
Of course. Okay, so I'm going to answer that in a more elaborate way as we come to how should I live then. We'll come to that point. Because for some, a cave life is fine. For some, a cave life is fine. And for some, a cave life is not fine at all, because you need to have that friction with the world to really, build spiritual muscles, so that you can deepen in that. But how do we know with which one am I? We'll come to that. We'll come to that in a moment. We'll come. I'll try to give you the whole thing today in the satsang today. So, but because I'm sharing this after a break, I want everyone to have a sort of broad sense into the construct, into the way of the art, as I've been calling it, in its entirety. Right? So, the first aspect we are looking at is the unperceivable insight aspect of it. Okay? So, if the pillar of the temple if the temple has 3 pillars, the first pillar is, and not in order important, but the first one, which is simplest to cover, is the unperceivable insight part of it. So the question was, how this discussion started is that you look at the impact of empty versus non-empty, open versus non-open. So the minute you are not empty, then which means that you've bought into or believed a thought, a notion from the mind, then what happens is that it's not just that notion that you believed, isn't it? Yeah. So it's like you may say, but I've just believed a very simple notion that steel straws are better than paper straws. Where is identity in that? I just bought this very simple notion. But what happens is that what is unavoidable is like the pool of conditioning, the pool of vasanas, the tree of conditioning operates in such a way that you tug at one leaf and the whole tree comes. You cannot isolate your conditioning piecemeal. You cannot conveniently use it and say, I will just believe this very harmless, humble notion, and the rest of it maybe. No, because soon, what will happen? What happens even when, what you're actually saying is, I feel that steel is better than paper. So this I also, by the way, has preferences about many other things. So the minute you identify like that, the I comes into it. So it comes with all of its shadow. It doesn't just come with this like very simple thing. It's just steel straw versus paper straw. Because then I believe in a sustainable environment. I believe in going green. I believe so many other things. They're all linked with this. I know what is the meaning of a straw. I know what is the meaning of paper. I know what kind of hazards can be there in, not being able to manage our trash correctly, and the whole world is being filled with landfills, and I know so much. So it's like you hope that you could pick up only one word from the dictionary, but to pick up that word from the dictionary, you have to pick up the whole dictionary. So as much as we may not like hearing that, we cannot selectively pick and choose. And this is what happens when we try to selectively pick and choose spiritual knowledge. What happens? You become very knowledgeable about spirituality conceptually, and you become much worse by having a spiritual ego, which is worse than a regular ego. So, emptiness is a gift that comes to us moment to moment naturally. Because in this moment you are empty, otherwise nobody would be able to do it. If there was a full tree of conditioning that you had to get rid of every moment, how would you do it? No. It's just that God is fresh and alive. Every moment is a fresh opportunity. That's why for couple of years I was just clicking, you know? Like right now. What's your name? Right now. You see, even the identity which is so primal, your own name, or what you take to be your name, is not there in the moment. You need to think about it.
What you say that every thought is an I thought.
Yeah.
There's no thought which is free of
Right. So when we want to get rid of the I thought, because that is a misconception after reading Bhagwan that some of us have, no? Like I've been able to get rid of all the thoughts, but now I'm just fighting with the I thought. You know, all nonsense. Yeah? Because the I thought is just any reference you're making to I. Yeah? I is contained in even the mildest seeming reference to I. So there's not a special I thought that you're supposed to vanquish at the end of, after dealing with all the other minion thoughts, then you come to the I thought and you attack the I thought and win again. It's not like that. This I thought is contained in every thought. Any reference you can make to the I. So any pointer that you have that the I is pointing to has to become a null pointer for software engineers. Yeah? It has to become null. No reference to the me anymore. And without a reference, are you lost? So the mind will say, if you don't know who you are, then how are you going to run this life? Your children will go hungry. You know? What happens when you lose all references? Are you lost or found? Yeah.
Kind of. I'm not sure if it's like that. So completely empty.
Completely empty of the mind, but full of the heart.
So when I was kind of going through some experience in that emptiness, it's an experience which I wanna kind of explain so that you can tell me what that kind of is. And then why then I picked up some things to basically even to attach on purpose, because that emptiness was just living, was that emptiness. So it's like then I would watching myself picking up things or person or animals to love, to attach myself, because otherwise
You wanted to.
it would just
Like
it would
too
be
much.
gone.
Yes.
I would be just gone.
Yes.
So
Yes.
what is that then? Because then I'm again on the
It's
beginning.
very helpful
Kind of. But with
when that is happening, to be in satsang when that is happening. So if you read, there are some examples of this happening quite spontaneously, even with Western philosophers. So if you read Sartre, and if you read a book called Nausea, so I started reading this book, and it's like, and I'm exaggerating, of course, to make the point, but he's literally saying like the worst thing ever happened to me. He's saying, where I was walking on the beach, but I could not tell the difference between the ocean and myself, and the sand and myself and the rocks. So I picked up a rock, and I could not tell whether the rock is looking at me or I am looking at the rock. And he's framing it at the start of his book Nausea. If I'm not mistaking books, it's possible. So he's framing it like that, like it's the worst thing. And I was reading it and saying, wow, this is this is an awakening experience where the me is not being found. This is what happened on the hot seat here. That I didn't know which is which, who's looking at who. It was not clear. I was looking at that, and he's just like, So he said something similar, I feel, where he said that because this was just too much. It was nausea. He called it nausea. Like it was just too much.
Yeah.
So he had to make a few reference points to just give his life some sanity, according to him. He said he would have a routine, or was it nausea or the other one? Maybe it
Not
was
in
some-
this. I understand what you're
You
saying,
see?
but I'm trying to explain
But it's similar
something.
where you just, when you lose all references to the I, many times because you don't have like the spiritual support of a master around you, or you're not in satsang, the mind can come in over there and say, whoa, you know, then you better attach yourself to something because it's just going to fade away or something is going to happen. You see?
When I'm like this, that I'm one with the ocean. This is why
Yes.
ocean.
Yeah.
And I feel like this. This is not
Yes.
too much. This
Yes.
is actually the natural,
Yeah.
how it
Yeah.
feels.
Yeah. Why did you have to attach to something?
Yeah, this is what I
Yeah.
try to explain. When I came to one, a particular exhaustion was so strong,
Yeah.
and it's with the Tiro
Yeah.
and with the Arunachala.
Yeah.
So I started to collapsing into unconsciousness. I would have to tell myself, wake up in the morning, stay awake, like mentally repeating myself to keep functioning.
Yeah.
And that caused some kind of, it's like I am keeping myself alive on like on machine, basically, on the here. Otherwise would not be anymore nothing. So when I saw that I have no kind of I had control over it for a while, when I was just kind of repeating myself every single thing I have to do like this. And then it came to a point where I had no control. So I would just collapse. And people would pick me up and kind of put me together like this. And it was not too much. It's not the point that was too much, but it was the point that was for me in that moment not kind of that. So I moved to a different location where I don't have this experience.
Yeah.
But I saw like what I'm doing is that I'm kind of picking up life back to continue it. Otherwise, it would be just melt, gone. But now when I'm going there, it's happening. It's the feeling is very similar. So I'm like kind of, you understand?
Yeah.
But I'm not saying it's too much, but I'm saying like, how can this be that you're aware and then you pick it up again and you
can be.
even stronger, basically.
Yes.
I went stronger now. You saw me with attachment never before. Like I just like, I go there, whatever. But now it's so strong. Like that is now everything. Like this, the attachment is now so strong. So basically, I went from that experience to, instead of completely letting go, I went much stronger. So how is then that would be a freedom, like being aware of it?
Yes. So I've seen this that most who have awakenings, then latch themselves back into something. You see? Because especially those in the West, if you have spontaneous awakenings, you don't even realize what is happening to you. But even here, even in Thiru and things, when these, through Bhagwan's grace, awakenings and spiritual experiences come, then without the presence of satsang, without the presence of master, for most it can seem too difficult to manage, because the fears from the mind, the pushing of the buttons, you see, all of those will tell you, no, return to some safety. You see, return to some safety, because this is no way to live. You see, this is no life. You're going to die like this. Whatever the proposal may be.
So the proposal for me in those moments, but I'm also considering that it was also exhaustion of the mind. It was like extinguished. The proposal was you're leaving the body, and that's it.
Leaving the body.
So in that moment, I saw I cannot control this because it was so strong. So I changed the location where I don't have this. I don't know why.
The fear of death, Maharaj, Nisargadatta Maharaj said in I Am that in the life of everyone who is coming to freedom, they have to encounter this fear of death.
This
And
is
they have
very
to,
strange.
if you don't transcend it, then it can keep you back. So basically the point I'm making is that you have a bit of an independence tree. So what happens is you just feel like, I don't want to trouble the master with this, I don't want to do this, I want to do this on my own. You see? But if you look at it, I don't know, strange example is coming. So we feel like, okay, who climbed Mount Everest first? Everyone says it's Hillary, no? Edmund Hillary. But actually, I feel like the first 1,000 ones, or I don't know how many have crossed now, could not have made it without the Sherpas. Everyone had the Sherpas helping them, even carrying them to some extent. You see? So I feel like many Sherpas would have gone before Hillary. So anyone who's attempting to climb this mountain of freedom, the Sherpas are available in the form of the masters. We must use them. We must use them. So, but we can just feel like, no, I don't want to trouble the Sherpa, or I want to do this by myself. And that sort of seemingly humble independence tree can also become a block. Just like, but there is someone who has gone through, if not the exact same experiences, at least in the same family of experiences, who can then guide you and say, okay, this will happen like this, and it is better if it happens in that moment. You see, in that when those things are happening, rather than in the post-mortem. So use the.
But you're saying the fear of death of the body. No, it cannot be. It's something else.
Nobody feels like when I die, the body is going to die. The fear of death is that I am going to die.
As a person.
Whatever, I am going to die. Whatever you take yourself to be, the one that can die is going to die, and that I is going to be me. See? Nobody feels like, oh, the body will go, I'll be fine.
Yes, I do.
Huh?
I do.
No, when we're not caught up in the fear, then of course, hopefully we're in satsang, we can see that the body will die, but I am deathless. But when we are caught in the fear of death, that means that we are thinking that I am going to die.
It's like I don't know, in my language it's like it's something that I'm not it's difficult this kind of saying, but yeah, it's something that I'm not kind of, I came also before when I was coming, and I was saying many times, like, that is for me freedom, to be free of all this. So this I do not perceive it in this way, but what I'm perceiving it more as being lost in that way. And this then with the body, the issue, like if I'm like, sometimes I love going there, I would stay there, but I go there and I feel the body is just going to be gone, but I want to be there. So it's like a trick to solve, which
So I'll tell you how to solve it. Not right now. We're coming to that. So we're clear that to remain in the unperceivable insight of who we are, we have to be empty. And the instant you hold on to a notion, whatever harmless seeming that notion may be, that insight seems to be lost in that moment. Yes? We're back or no? Should we recap a bit more? So for those who build the temple on this, with the foundation of this insight, or with the pillar of this insight, you see, you'll find it much easier. If it was just a belief, then it just comes. This is like I am Brahman. You may say it in Sanskrit, Aham Brahman Asmi. It's the Mahavakya. Beyond all Vakyas. Mahavakya means super Vakya and super sentence. Everything else is just a sentence. But some are like Maha sentences. So Mahavakya. Aham Brahman Asmi. What will happen? Nothing. Maybe more trouble than Aham Insan Asmi. What is Aham? What is the Purusham Asmi? So if it just remains conceptual.
How to tell when I'm doing it conceptually or when I'm
remain empty. Are you here?
yeah.
We get used to a different way of confirming, a different way of concluding, which is going to help her as well. Where we're no longer stuck in the opposites of what the mind is offering. So where you can confirm that you are aware, you can actually build your house there. And you need to, it happens organically if you're going to be open and empty. It is not that you are lost. You actually come to your true house, which is to live in the way of the heart. So that is why it's important to spend a little more time maybe on what happens when you're really empty. And maybe delve into deeper into my question, which is, are you lost or are you found? Because to the mind, it is completely lost. You have no plan for the future. You don't know how you're going to run your life according to the mind. But what is your experience? You're found. You're found. See, in the sense that nobody has come to this emptiness, like completely, without the mind. And say, it may be like wobbly like that for a few moments, maybe even for a couple of days. But the wobbliness is not permanent. In fact, this kind of stability that you get in living like this can never be offered by the mind. Because the mind's beliefs are frivolous, trivial. You believe something today, 2 years later you'll believe the opposite. So many things you believed in college, you don't believe now. There is no stability to be found in the conceptual frameworks of the mind. I believed I was a complete atheist in college. I used to believe that God is a non-existent concept made by losers because they're so weak. Imagine if belief systems were permanent. But nobody's experienced that beliefs are permanent. And that unsteadiness should make us look for a more steady way of life. So those who've been taught credibly to remain empty, even if they go through these periods of wobbliness, will confirm to you that their life has never been more stable. It's like for the first time you're starting to live on solid ground. which is completely the opposite of what the mind is telling you. The mind is telling you, you're going to die. This is how you're going to run your life. You see? All kinds of fears can come. You see? Some get different type of fears also. Don't have to worry about any of that. So, without the mind to push you around, your life for the first time will seem steady. The ship will seem steady for the first time. It doesn't mean that it's become inert. It may be full of, outwardly it may become full of activity also. You may come into some missionary mode and wanting to share this, you see, with everyone. You may want to walk from place to place, and we've seen lives of sages where it happened like that. But inwardly, stable.
That's the way to tell if it's stable and...
No, you can tell, no? I'm just saying that the mind will try to make you scared by saying your life will be so all over the place. You won't know what you're doing and how things will be taken care of. But to live in faith, to live in trust, so much. It's not make-believe anymore. So how to tell whether you're following the mind or heart? Can you not tell? I mean, there's a problem existent that we have to solve it. When you believe a thought, can't you tell you're believing a thought?
When I believe a thought, I can't tell
You
whether
can't
I'm
tell.
believing my thoughts or when I'm in the inside. But when inside, it's clear.
When you believe yes, so remain in the clarity of the insight
When it can't be
and
doubted.
discard everything else. Yes,
Ah.
yes. Exactly. Exactly. If it is doubtable, then leave it. You see? Initially, you may leave a lot of intuitive insight also, because the mind will come and doubt it. But it's okay. Insight is not in a rush or running out of insight. You see? And one trick is that if you have to keep referring back to your spiritual experience of when you were finding it, just drop all of that. Why not now? And this is for you as well, where if you have to refer back to history, and when an awakening was happening for you then, leave all of that. It's just a dream. Why not now? Has the truth gone away somewhere? Fresh God is here. You know the story? I went to drop my son to university. Then we were sitting with a small town called Bloomington, Indiana, in which there was probably one hotel, or maybe 2, 3, but we were sitting in the small reception lobby. Some people came to meet me. And this very sweet boy, I won't mention his name. But, so he said to me, you know, Father, when I came with you to the retreat in Tiruvannamalai, then this experience happened, but it's never happened since then. And all I want is that. You see? And I heard it like a little bit. But after that, I started screaming in the lobby, I was like from my level, not like screaming, but it was just like, but fresh God is here. Fresh God is here. And you're wasting all your time thinking about some experience you had from 3 years ago when you found God. Then you want that God back, but you don't want the fresh God that is here. This is the trick of the mind. You say, but then, but that, but what should I, but is God not here now? Yeah. So the receptionist was staring at me. He seemed quite peaceful. What happened to him? Yeah. But the point is very important. There's no point dwelling on the past. It's not that God was there then and He is not here now.
Sometimes when I can't orientate, if I go in the memory, I find kind of like how it was, like a map.
You stay here a few days.
But it's not.
Stay here a few days. When you stay here, then
What will you do?
You can learn to be in a sort of refuge of satsang instead of having to deal with this by yourself. So the mind will come and scare you. Or you need a reference point, otherwise, and it will keep you in the building. No? So what will you do? How much will you mess up? Huh?
Who knows what happens? Who knows what happens?
Otherwise, you'll be caught up in the past.
No, I can see. I know the memory, the mind, the tricks. It looks like more you kind of seen this. It's just. Well, I know what is the memory. I know it's not.
You need to find someone who can carry all this for you. That is a teacher or a master, whatever you call it. The Sherpa you need to find. You keep feeling that.
What, the mind?
Huh?
The burden.
Everything, yeah. All burdens can be given. Because if you cannot find someone you can surrender to, and you take it on to yourself, then freedom seems so much of a difficult project.
But it's my feeling is that it's me that would take it on me.
That's the trouble.
You don't feel like this would be taken by anyone else than me.
That's the trouble.
Whatever that is. I mean, like now, lately, I don't want it and I want to give it. But otherwise, yeah, it was like, if I can carry, I'll carry.
Yes. I have not heard of one who has been able to carry this by themselves. Even historically, actually. It's such a difficult path in the world today. No? It's a difficult path in the world today because I feel it is next to impossible. Everything is possible by God's grace, but next to impossible to come to this by yourself. And yet, those who are truly authentically offering this are very few. We're surrounded in a world full of Donald Trumps of spirituality. So people get jaded by all of that, and they feel that I must be able to do this by myself. There's a whole movement about being your own guru. Isn't it? Why? Because they are scared. No? And many for good reason. Scared of the exploitation, scared of the nonsense that is peddled in the name of spirituality. And then it becomes very easy to paint everyone with the same brush, and everyone then says, I was in that boat. Where I said, I'm off this guru business. After spending a few years with Ramesh, and then I heard something, so I was just like, I'm going to do this by myself because and I couldn't admit this, but I was heartbroken by the guru business. So either for that reason we want to do this by ourselves, or we have like a independent streak. You see, many of the boys that came to me had this problem where they just felt like the father's given us everything that he could. Now the rest of it is for us to do. And maybe they read some Krishnamurti or something like that. Krishnamurti is of course very beautiful, but it can happen, no? And he was right about, like he said, all of this guru business is fraudulent, but I would not say all, I would say 99.9% maybe. And how does one then find that point one? Which is grace, I guess. But it's very sticky things. So the point really is that if we feel truly in our heart that we come to a true Sangha, then use that fully. Use that fully. But I completely also understand where the fears come from, because I've been there. To climb this mountain without the Guru as a Sherpa is not impossible, but not easy.
It seemed like, I mean, what I'm trying to say is that it's the master. There's an unknown factor which helps you not to believe it. It's not like you can do it on your own. It's really not possible to that. It's quite apparent to you that something else comes and breaks that force of habit, because you just can't do it on your own, and you see that you can't do it on your own. I mean, it will be really, well, we do become stupid and arrogant to think that we are doing it when we reach that habit state. But otherwise, if you're just a little bit humble, in that moment, you do recognize something just switched by, nothing to do with you. You see it so clearly in that moment.
Yes, and that is the answer to my question when I was asking whether you're lost or you're found. So that is the answer to the question. That when we lose our mind in that way, when we lose our mind, we find the Guru. We're not lost. We found the Sadguru presence within. So how to run our life then? It's not possible that you're left in the lurch, that you were seeking God truly and you gave up on the voice of ignorance, and God said, okay, let's just leave this one in the lurch. The presence of the Sadguru within does become apparent. Many times it can seem like the dark night of the soul, but the ego gets completely squeezed in that. All selfishness gets squeezed in that. It is said that Christ himself was tempted, was attempted to be tempted. The temptations came from the devil for even him, in the form of fear, in the form of pleasure, in the form of gratification. All of these things will come to turn us back from the way of the heart back into the way of the mind. We talked about unperceivable insight and many other things, but centrally this. What can anchor us to this? What is an anchor for the truth instead of an anchor to the false? What anchors us to the false? Thoughts, fear, attachment, you see, what is going to happen, thoughts of the future, regrets from the past, all of these are anchors to the mind. What anchors us to the truth? to release the false. You see? When we release the false, what happens is that we discover a new anchor which can make our life so stable, which is the anchor of unconditional love. And after childhood, most of us probably have only met conditional love. You do this for me, you get into a relationship with me, you do this, all this business we have called love. And most of us have experienced, before we experience the love of the Guru, we experience this kind of unconditional love probably only in our childhood. But as we start to remain empty in our heads, we start to remain full in our hearts. What does it mean, full in our hearts? Full of the presence of this unconditional love. Which anchors us to Him so beautifully. Because truly love and fear cannot coexist. We had some conversations about this, but you start to see that when your heart is full of love, there is no room for fear. And all the ones who feel like they love their beloved so much, even historically, in India we have this, even the song, no? Jab pyar kiya to darna kya. We have this love, then they feel like they can do anything. They are fearless. And all the love stories have shown us this. Romeo and Juliet onwards. But all unconditional love is actually the love for God. And love is so beautiful that you don't know what is the difference between giving it and getting it when it's unconditional. When it's a business dealing, then you realize, you're like, I'm giving this much, how much am I getting in it? So that's a different. But feel the love in your heart and see whether you're giving it or getting it. So what will happen is that, so we're talking obviously about the second pillar in this way of the heart, which is unconditional love. What will happen is that as you start to live open and empty, and in the presence of presence alone, and not the mind, then all these byproducts are natural: love, peace, joy. But why am I singling out love? Because love is something that you can do. You can actively love God. And your intention to actively love God brings God's love to the forefront of your life. So you don't have to determine whether you are loving God or God is loving you. Just have the intention to love God. Because why would you not? He is the only presence that you know. He is the light of your life. He is the source of all peace, joy, intelligence, and love itself. Who is worthy of love if not God? And we've been having some beautiful conversation. Atmika prodded some contemplation here also. And I was telling her that we love God because it is Him, you see. We don't just love His love. Of course, His love is beautiful and we can drown in it, and such a beautiful way to live. But suppose that if love were just one directional, which it isn't, but if it was only that God is who He is and we could love Him, but we could not taste that love for ourselves, it would still be worth it to love Him so deeply in our heart. Because He is Him. That's why I was saying. That's why I was saying that. Yeah, I'll elaborate on that. So that's why I was saying that love does not make Him Him. He makes love love. So even love, this unconditional oneness, belongingness that we experience, is in service to Him, is a flower at His feet. But His reality is so much beyond even love. So it's a great anchor for us and a great ladder for us to climb, because as we climb the ladder of unconditional love, it leads to His feet. So if our head is empty and our heart is full of unconditional love, then we've set the foundation for a truly spiritual life. So whether you think you know how to do it or not, because your mind will get in the way, just love Him with all your heart, with everything that you've got. Don't hold back. Don't ration it out. Fall in love with Him so deeply and fully. And I promise you that this is the one relationship where you can never be heartbroken. And never be heartbroken in this love. And I have to admit that this path of love was not natural to the expression here. I always considered myself more of a Jnana Yogi type expression. But as I'm deepening in my insight about Him, I find myself falling in love deeper and deeper with Him. It's my deepest obsession, God. Deeply infected and obsessed with Him. And still I feel like I'm just beginning. I could love him so much more. Like some of the Sufis and some other traditions where they refer to God as their beloved and lover and best friend and all of that, and I could never resonate with those earlier. That seems almost disrespectful. But now I'm getting a taste of when a sage called God his Yar. I was not resonating with that earlier, but now I can see from where that some sages have called him their husband. Even the male sages have called him their husband. I'm seeing where that is coming from. It's a privilege to be infected in this way. So allow yourself to love him with all your heart, with everything that you've got. And I have to say that although I may not have resonated with some of the terminology that some of these sages use to refer to God as, I always felt like I love him so deeply in my heart. But I'm noticing the ever deepening and the ever sweetening of the love here for God. And it is that love and not anything else, more than anything else, this love which compels me to want to serve him. And I completely realize the conceptual dichotomy that brings us to. The conceptual dichotomy of first coming to the discovery that there are no two. There is only one reality, that is him. And I see that I am that. And even this consciousness, which I'm so deeply in love with, arises within myself. The dichotomy is that I am also that who just wants to sit at his feet and serve him. I want to be faithful to him. So we're talking about servitude. Love and servitude combined make bhakti. What are the elements of this servitude? Faith is very, very important. Because if God becomes just a make-believe game, then our life will not truly be spiritual. If it just becomes a question of our belief, there is a God somewhere, then we'll forget him in the most important times. So faith is very important. To trust the intuitive discovery of the self and the arising of consciousness, unbound consciousness, which we find intuitively, to trust that more than what this world is showing us, is faith. We live as if God is not around us, is not here right now. But I want to tell you that He is. How can you find that? How can you meet that? Only in faith. Not rationally, not perceptually, but only in faith. And in faith, we start to question, how are we living? We are living oblivious to God most of the time. That has to change, and that is changing with faith. So in hearing Kabir and Farid and Rahim, I can relate to the references that they are making. They will say Malik, and I see that Malik is the master. He is here, right here. What stops us from living in the reality of the fact that He is here? Because we trust our eyes more than our heart. That stops us. That's why we've been doing these experiments of, okay, so what if Krishna was sitting on that sofa? What would we do then? If you were sitting on your bed, what would you do then? That is lack of faith, to trust what your eyes are showing you more than what your heart is showing you. And it is what most beginners may ask for in spirituality. I've been talking to some beginners and they say, if I could only see Him, then I'd have faith in His reality. But you can see Him, but not with your eyes. Because if you saw Him just with your eyes, He would become another experience which then you would normalize within a few days, if not hours. But you meet this holy presence within yourself, which is God's presence, in the form of the Holy Spirit, in the form of the Atma, in the form of the Sadguru presence within ourselves. It is Him. I tell you, it is Him. If you forget about everything else I've ever said, but you trust me only on this, that the presence that you experience within yourself, that being is Him. And He is a living being. He is a living reality, much more than the ones you can see in front of you with your eyes, much more than this one, which is a bucket of flesh. He is the reality. He is here. For some, this is so beautiful. For all of us, it is very beautiful. But some of you may also be scared about this. But I don't want God to be here always. I don't want Him to know what I do behind closed doors or what I think. But you don't have to be scared of these things. But know that He's here. He always is. So we have to learn to live in the reality of this intuitive insight more than we would live if he was holding our hand and walking outside. How would you live if that was to happen? Can you see where our trust still goes? That we feel like, okay, but if he was sitting here, then I would just be able to surrender my life to him, hand everything over to him. But he's sitting closer than in front of you. It is him. Kabir ji said, मुझको कहाँ ढूंढे रे बंदे, मैं तो हूँ तेरे साथ में, मैं तो हूँ तेरे पास में. Where are you looking for me? I'm right here, next to you, with you. And he's telling you literally, please don't take this metaphorically. Because in that ability to make it poetic or metaphoric, you may just say, what beautiful words. Maybe one day I can live like that. No, he's saying now. There is no time. He's telling you literally that God is the presence that you have known, is the only presence there is. So this is the faith aspect of servitude. Because if you don't even meet the master, then you're fooling yourself about following his will. See? Then you're just making up what you think his will is and not following his will. God would have wanted me to do this. God would have wanted me to do that. God would have wanted me to meditate. God would have wanted me to. But why this would have? Is he not here? See, so the obedience flows from faith. Obedience to him flows from our faith. He's here. Allow him to move you. Allow him to move you and allow him to guide you. How to live in God's will? In obedience to him. Allow him to move you. Don't let your ideas get in the way. And if you hear from him in your heart, then follow that unwaveringly to the best of your ability. That is obedience. So humility is very important. If you have pride, all of this will be taken by pride. All that is meant to be in servitude to him will become in service to me, to the me. Pride contaminates. Pride contaminates more than anything, probably. That is why Sheikh Farid said that if my head is not bowed down, then let it be burnt. like firewood. Strong words, but very important. If my head is not bowed down, let it be burnt like firewood. Because our pride reverses servitude. Our pride expects us to be served by Him. Prayerfulness and gratitude. All of these things about faith, humility, obedience, prayerfulness, gratitude are how you keep your inner space sacred for God. And it is the easiest way to live. Although initially it may sound like a lot. It may sound like, can I live like this? Because it's completely contrary to the mind's frameworks. And to the mind, even Advaita is very convenient actually. I come, I do some, who am I, who am I, who am I? I see I'm one with Him, chill out. Where's the question of servitude? The only one. I saw it. It must be avidya he's talking about. So the mind will come in doubt and attack even the master who showed us the way of insight and use that only against him and say, oh, but I'm one with him. What's he talking about? What is that? That is a spiritual pride. And that is why we may get stuck. We may get stuck. Like it is said, the whole elephant may go through the eye of the needle, but sometimes the tail gets stuck. Our spiritual insight itself may become our pride. And before we know it, we have not fallen on our knees in service to Ram, but we have become Ravan instead. Did Ravan realize he's become Ravan? He thought he's speaking the truth. And the words he was speaking were truthful pointers. But the evil that flowed from him, in spite of his insights, in spite of so much knowledge, in spite of being the composer of, like even the Shiv Tandav Stotram is composed by him. What a beautiful one he must have been before pride got him. But once we are caught up in pride and we live on egoic terms, and that is the only sin. To follow the way of the ego and not the way of God is the only sin. You tell me, when you suffer like that, what happens? What is the thought process? You can experience another's pain.
Yes.
You see, but that is not suffering. What's the difference between pain and suffering?
Well, we would pain from the body, suffering the mind, but
Yes.
kind of for me goes hand in hand.
So, well, we have to cut that connection then. Because the minute you get the mind involved, pain is a natural condition in the human existence. For suffering, you have to do a lot of work. We don't realize this. You see, but suffering is not organic. An infant has pain, colic pain, this pain, that pain, so much pain they come with. You see, and as parents, many times you're just helpless. How do we help you? How do we help? You see? But they are not suffering. Like my son would get colic exactly at 5 p.m. every night. Now I can't imagine he's a Hulk, but you carry him, you try to do everything, give him the colic medicine and all of that. And you feel poor thing suffering so much, and so cry so much. Like his life is going to finish, that much they cry in colic pain. And the minute it gets over, out. Have you seen the kids? Like few minutes, just like pain, yelling, screaming. And the minute's over, laughing, just, playing with the rattle, playing with all of it. That is the difference between pain and suffering. Pain is to experience that sensation and allow that body to respond to that sensation naturally. Suffering is to involve the me and say, why does it happen to me? When will this stop? How long do I have to go through this? That's a lot of work. So pain is natural in the human condition, but suffering isn't. Suffering is a prolonged. Like if we were to go through that pain, we would not face it like an infant. Because after the pain would get over also, we'll be like, what do I do so it doesn't come again? I have to, change something. I have to go to a different doctor. And why does God keep doing this to me? And, how much should I pray? And, all of this. That is suffering. You see? So the mind uses the appearance of these sensations that we call pain to get us into the trap of suffering. That is the way it seems to go hand in hand. You see, because it uses that perception as evidence of something being wrong. But also the other way. It's also the other way. If there is some pain, then the mind uses that as an opportunity for its guerrilla warfare and say, see, something is wrong. You must fix it. You must change something. Me. And even the scientists actually have said that when suffering is met with when pain is met with acceptance, you see, pain seems a lot lesser and goes away a lot sooner. And people working in hospices and all have done this research that for patients who met the pain with acceptance, they seem to be in a lot less pain. You see? So even the pain seems to get amplified when we involve our mind in it, although we're trying to fix it by involving our mind. So don't suffer for another, but you will experience, if your heart is open, you will experience the pain of another. And if you're going to share as you go along, then that will become a way of life for you. He said pain. That's why I keep saying that sharing satsang is not as glamorous as it may appear. Because basically the contract is that you're willing to take all the pain of your children, you see, happily, that too. And I would say that we should not share unless we can feel like we can take the pain of the entire world. If that is not needed for them to turn to God, we must be able to say, if it helps, Father, and if there is no pride in that prayer, may I experience all the pain of my brothers and sisters instead of them having to go through it. If you cannot make this prayer naturally and with integrity, then we should not really try to embark on the path of sharing satsang. We may involve ourselves in things like the heart temple movement, where we collectively gather and expand our love for God and our insight. But if you truly feel like you want to block, like I've met some who had some awakening experiences and then started to share, and then one of them also had a phone call with me and she said, Ananta-ji, is this what happens then if you share? I said, yes, that is just natural for that transference to happen in that way. She said, then I don't want it. Then I said, okay, that's good that you're clear about it, because that is the way of a teacher. There is no, like, to be a teacher, is to be a healer. It comes with it. You cannot say that I will just talk about God and draw a boundary. You can do like that also. You can just make discourses about God. You see that, but that is not satsang then. Although many call it satsang, it is not satsang. So you can make academic discourses about God or come make speeches about God. But let's not call that satsang. And when you're deeply, deeply humble in your heart, then to heal is natural for you. Never try to become a healer. Never take on the badge of a healer. Just keep your head bowed down to God, and God knows exactly how things have to flow from where to where. And be very clear that it is coming from your heart. Because if it is coming from some conceptual, messianic complex, then it's going to cause big trouble. You know what I mean? Like some may get even attracted to this conceptually, what I'm saying. You see, like a messiah complex. I am going to, suffer on the behalf of the whole world and heal the world. But notice, if it is coming from pride, you're not healing the world. Just head bowed down naturally in service to God. Accept everything as His prasad.
So, Father, when we go closer to God, how do we consciously make effort that the pride doesn't come up? Because the Ravana example you gave, if you just remove the pride, he was very close to God. Technical aspects, right? The only thing maybe could be pride and something else made him the extreme opposite of God, literally, like a Rakshas, right? So again, while now we are starting this movement and we're trying to, at some level, apart from this community satsang, we're trying to, make conscious effort, right? Flap the wings. So how do we stay in our hearts and not get this pride rise? Right? How can we do this?
Right. One, of course, you already said, is to keep coming to satsang and to have this conversation. Because it is the master's job. If he smells something there, he's going to chop. So that chop, if you find that you come to a point where you don't want to be chopped by the master, you're just like, no, now I am also sharing. Now we are like pals. Who are you to chop me? So it's like, I have also brought this. So that itself could be some indication that if there's now an idea that, now I'm also Guruji. So, so those dynamics you could smell on yourself. And just what will happen is that God will nudge. You see, God will keep nudging when we're going in the wrong direction. So if you find yourself being in sort of denial, so when you feel the pull, then bring that into your inquiry and don't hide it away behind some conceptual idea. remember to pray, remember to keep your head bowed down. We cannot guarantee that pride will not come, but we can only create these safety mechanisms. I'm well aware that as we're trying to spread God's light in this way, some of you will experience some pride. You start getting attached to your stuff, your PR. If you know, as I've been calling it, I was saying the other day, that never buy your own PR. That's where companies go wrong and they get into trouble. It's like because you'll have people who are starting to come to you and you're bringing God's light to them, they will feel gratitude. Some of them will want to touch your feet, some of them will want to put you on a pedestal, some of you may give you honorific titles like Father, like Ma, like all these honorific titles will come to you. You see, but you have to be very, 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 very keep your nose clean very, very well and keep smelling, the stink on yourself. And you will find it, and God will nudge you. But if you just remain in avoidance of the nudges, saying, nothing, I'm cool, I'm chill, then God will have to slap us. So, and slap us he will. You see, Ravana had his head cut off 10 times, and his whole family had to die for him. So just I'm hoping that in sharing these examples, in sharing and reminding us over and over, we'll stay away from spiritual pride. But I realize it is part of this play that is going to happen. But we cannot not share God because of the danger of the risk of pride.
Another thing is that if we got to credit all the things we did, it would be much easier to not feel pride.
Like, how do you want to take credit?
I'm stamped done by God and not by me. Something
all is stamped by God alone. Is it not stamped already done by God?
It's not clear what He's doing, what I'm doing egoically.
It's quite clear, actually. What are you doing?
When I have pride, I feel I've done something, no?
Correct. But actually, when you look objectively, what are you doing?
I feel I'm saying these words.
How?
That I don't know.
Everything is stamped by God, my dear. The whole point is that when we buy into egoic identity, then we take credit for that which we can never do, because you don't exist. The non-existent one cannot do anything. How many times has a non-existent cat meowed? I see God stamp everywhere. And even then, I see what you're saying, and God says hello to us constantly. In the occurrences of things which are next to zero probability, in the so-called serendipity and coincidences that we encounter in our lives, that's just a stamp from God saying, I'm here. Because none of our competition could have ever done those things. It's constant. The more open we become, the more we will notice all of these things. It's constant. He's constantly showing us. So these are the building blocks of a truly spiritual life. Unperceivable insight, unconditional love, and servitude. And because the mind loves frameworks, that's why I'm presenting this to you as a framework. Actually, it can't really be defined. And also that's the reason why I've co-opted a term from a completely different tradition actually, called Achinta Veda Veda, which I feel like in uncomprehensible difference and yet oneness. You can look at it as a synthesis of the Vedantic traditions. I don't know if any of you got a sense of that, what was shared as Achinta Veda Veda. What am I saying? I'm saying that if this is spirituality, what must there be? Spirit. There can be no spirituality without spirit. What is spirit? Unperceivable. God's presence. You see, so let's say spirit is God's presence. So God's presence must be the central tenet of spirituality. Otherwise, there is no spirit. You see? Now, if you look around in the world, even in spirituality, people don't talk about God's presence, and very rarely. So that's why I'm saying that that's not really spirituality. It's more psychotherapy, self-help, all of those things, which are fine. But let's not call it spirituality. So that in which God's presence is central is spirituality, because it's about spirit. You see? So Atma, or the Sadguru presence, or the Holy Spirit, or the sense of I amness, the being, the living being called God, his presence is central to spirituality. Now, that is central. And we also find that I am that in which the being arises, whose presence this is. So I am that absolute to which the Sufi said, higher than that. Are you God? Higher than that. Is it? Higher than that. I am that. Is it? That is on one end of this, between the Abheda, non-distinction between the highest and myself. There is no difference or distinction between the highest and myself. But is that all the insight there is? Because if that was all the insight there is, then there would be no insight about following God's will, to live with our head bowed down, to be thankful, to be faithful, to be humble. But I have to say that as there is the insight of my reality as the unperceivable self, there is also insight about the reality of how this life must be lived, which is in love and servitude to God. So to live in faith, humility, obedience, gratitude, and prayerfulness is as valid an insight as the ultimate reality of the self. Is there a way for us to reconcile all of this in the mind? You cannot reconcile being that which is the source of the entire universe, as well as that which has to keep the head bowed down and live in thank you and gratitude all the time. We cannot reconcile that in our intellect, and that is why it is achintya. It is non-comprehensible or unfathomable. And why is this term? Why is this term? It is just to give you some spiritual reassurance. Otherwise, it is not needed. Why do we need this term even? Achintya Veda Veda. Why do we need it? as a counter to our lack of faith. Because to the mind, the opposites of this, the opposite ends of spiritual insight can seem too polar opposite to make any sense of. Is it? But the trick in the human condition is if you have a term for it, it's fine. Really, isn't it so? If you come to healing, if you come to satsang and you get healed and your mental conditions all steady, you can call it healing, which is great, beautiful presence, grace. Term is grace, you see. But if you call it spiritual bypassing, then it's bad. Oh, spiritual bypassing. I just came to satsang and he said, "You're fine. God's grace is taking care of everything." And I felt so. Some pseudo psychotherapist over there will say, "Oh, you're just spiritual bypassing." And I was like, "Oh, that's really bad." But when it was grace, then it was really good. You see? So, because we are still caught in terms, that's why I have to provide this term, so that all of you don't feel like you're going berserk. Because on one hand, you're the highest of the highest, and on one hand, you're not even a grain of sand at God's feet. So it has historically been called Achinta Veda Aveda. Feel better. Once we have the crutch of a term, then we feel like, okay, I must be onto something. Otherwise, it can just feel like, is he losing it? Am I going in the right path? So, what is the path that you're following? The traditional path called Achintya Bheda Abheda. And it's actually there. You know it. But Bheda Abheda is from Vedanta.
I know, but I didn't know that, like so obnoxious way, and I remember I was gone. And I just keep talking about it. Can you not understand that you're just making number or something?
Yeah. No. So yeah, but you have to see that it's a very sophisticated thing where. So what happened is because the conceptual distinction between Shankara's way of expressing and Ramanujacharya's way of expressing and Madhavacharya's way of expressing, so people were in trouble because they felt that they could smell truth when they heard all three of them. They heard Shankaracharya and they were like, this is good. Then they went to, they heard Ramanujacharya and they were like, wow, this is so good and full of devotion and love. And then they went to Madhavacharya who said, just live your life in surrender and devotion. Don't talk about oneness because he is too great, unfathomable. And you feel like, wow, this is a beautiful way to live. So then the Gaudiya, what the tradition? Gaudiya tradition. They made this term, Achinta Veda Veda, as a sort of simple synthesis of all the different Vedantic traditions, because all of them ring true. And what happened here is that it is not that I got attracted to this term first. I started saying these things in satsang first. You see? Where I am that the highest and all of that. And then, but I'm also just a servant. And I realized that this can be very confusing for all of you without having a string to tie it all together. So to help you in that way, to give you a nicely wrapped up package, I'm using the term. But I've not co-opted it in the way it was not meant to be used. And this is exactly how it is meant to be used.
Just that is the fight between Advaita and Advaita.
Yeah. That is the attempt. Settle the fight between jnana and bhakti also. You see, bhakti actually conceptually is not possible without Dvaita. Isn't it? So that's why even Maharaj said that from my highest insight, I am that. You see? And from my heart, from my love, I am just in service to him. I'm a servant of that. And I see that in the life of all the sages, whether you take Bhagwan, Sri Ramana Maharishi, if you take any of the sages, Sri Ramakrishna, Anand Mahima, all have talked at both ends of this spiritual spectrum. They have not said only this and only that. And Bhagwan said very simply, and I love that quote, I probably posted it again also, where he said, as long as duality, there must be a devotee. So if you feel like you've eradicated all duality from your life, fully open and empty all the time, then you don't need to bother about the servitude part. But because I know it is not true, it is not true for anyone. It is very important. It's the only true way to live. Because you can either serve your mind or you can serve God. Is there a third option? This is what I've been asking all of you, especially those who are resisting. Resisting and want to be only Kevala Vedantins, Advaita Vedantins, or Shuddha Advaita Vedantins. So, can you confirm that you're always open and empty and you're just allowing God to move you? And if you're just allowing God to move you, then that is exactly the servitude that I'm talking about. So you can either serve God or you can serve your mind. Is there a third way? Is there a me which is separate from both? Which wants to live on its independent terms? No, me is just a construct from belief in the mind. I hope all of you can hear this, that there is only, we can either be a servant of God or a servant of the ego. But servitude is inevitable. That which we take to be mastery over our life is servitude to the mental oppression, servitude to the ego. If you can see this, then servitude to God will sound like heaven to you, not a place to resist. To live at His feet, to live in His presence, to follow only how He is moving you and how He is guiding you, what better, what higher privilege than that can we get? Are we not blessed to even have this conversation? Otherwise, you know how people have to live? They have to presume what His will would be by following the ethical precepts in their religion or their spiritual books, and presume that that will keep them safe from living in the mind's oppression and following His will. Here you can meet Him, you can love Him, and will that love not come with service naturally? So notice that our resistance is trying to hold up a competitive God, which is what the ego's final intention is, to become the ruler of the world. As Guruji would say, that the stomach of this me is never full. Always saying more, 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 next, more, me. I'm specially deserving. That's what the egoic voice is. That I'm special and deserving. I should be the one getting it. And preferably, and honestly speaking, I should be the only one getting it. So not only do I want to be first, I want to be the only one if I can. And God forbid if somebody else is finding God first. Because that seems like an attack on our spiritual identity. Have you noticed the absurdity of that? That someone, a brother and sister in the world, is coming to God first. And instead of celebrating that it is possible to come to God and we can live in God's light, and instead of giving us reassurance and hope, we feel bad that I am not first. This is the nature of the mind. This is hell, no? Is there another hell than this? We don't need any other hell if there is even. This is enough. To live in that kind of separation, distance, aversion to our own brothers and sisters, other children of God. It is hate. We don't realize it, but it's hate. And hate is hell. To feel an aversion to another discovering God is our hatred for them. So in this world, we have normalized hell actually. We're living in a hellish way without even realizing. That's why I shared with some of you this show called The Good Place, where this it's like a comedy, but the premise is very, very nice, where this girl who lived a life full of hatred and anger and all of these things, she actually goes to hell, but that hell is designed to look like heaven. And that they reveal at the end of, sorry, I've spoiled season 1, but so that hell is designed to look like heaven, but what she's finding is, so she's been told that there's a mistake and she got sent to heaven. Like she understands it, nobody else knows. So she's trying to get herself to fit in, and all the complexities that happen there are just like this world. Just like the things that happen here, relationships and having to fake a self-image and a lot of these things. And then she realizes by the end of the season 1 that this is actually hell. She's not in heaven. There was no mistake. You see? So where we can hate each other, where we can be jealous of each other, can that be heaven? Can that be a middle ground even? There is no other hell needed. This is hell. If we live like that. You see? And this is heaven if we live in God's presence. So whether you call it a temple of God or you call it the kingdom of heaven being within you, escape this hell, escape this hellish place by living in God's light. I don't know what mechanism or privilege got us to this point where we can talk about living in a life in God's light as a reality, as an actuality, instead of a far-fetched notion. Don't you lose this opportunity. Don't lose this opportunity. I cannot tell you how urgent the matter is. It's not meant to create anxiety in you. It is meant to create a dispassion. Empty out your hands from this worldly stuff. Empty it. There's all dead. It's all dead stuff. Keep yourself free. There's no time to waste. Do we know what tomorrow morning is going to bring? We don't know. Don't leave the opportunity to lead a true life, loving God and serving Him for some nonsensical thing which is dead anyway. You see, this body is just like this. It is being animated by a puppeteer. You see, life force, life energy. So it is like the wind going through this. Seems like this is alive. It's like this. It's dead. Without God's presence, it's dead. You see. So if this hand was not holding it up, it's gone. Finished. That's what's going to happen to this. But imagine that we have been given this opportunity to start off believing that we are this, but we can actually live with the hand. You see? So we don't fall with this like dead meat, but live eternally in God's light. So don't waste your life on napkin identity. It's nothing. Nothing's gonna happen. What do we want in our life? We want another twin napkin to love us and to have the best relationship, soulmate. Then two napkins will dance together. Then what do we want? Do you want to expand the life of this napkin? It should not be torn. It should have good health, become immortal. Can't happen. And who wants to live as a napkin forever? It's all a sham. It's all Leela, Maya. See through this Maya and drop it all. Whose presence is light to your life? Who's sitting in your heart? Are they just big ideas? Are they just fancy notions? Or is it not reality? Aren't your notions of your life plans and what should happen for your body, aren't those the fancy ideas? Away from the reality of God's presence? And the world will tell you, balance it out. Be half napkin, half hand. It's all absurd. It's mud, you see, it's mud. Kabirji has called this body mud, nothing. It's a clay pot. It's a clay pot which is going to break. So it came from mud, it will go back to mud. Stunning, it's stunning, it's so
He said, I'm
beautiful.
not going to leave my beloved because it's raining and my coat will get wet. He said, no, I'll go. He said, no, but my coat will get wet.
And the beauty of that whole thing by him is that it is so beautifully multi-layered. You can apply it to like the rigmarole of day-to-day life versus love for God, but you can also apply it as the spiritual quest and the longing for God in our heart versus the play of the mind and his desires. It's so stunning. It's like at the hand of God. It's such a beautiful compilation. The Guru Granth Sahib Ji, I'm realizing that they've done such a beautiful job, because it's so strange to meet this sage from a different tradition through the Sikh scripture of the Guru Granth Sahib. So beautiful. Like a lot of the things that I feel like he said are not available anywhere else but here.
Sufi.
Sufi tradition. The sheikh, he was one of the sheikhs, spiritual masters.
Kabir is also in the Guru Granth.
Yeah. So beautifully they've compiled all this. So beautiful. Like the Guru Granth Sahib Ji is one where both the ends of this, the ultimate reality of the one Omkar, Ek Omkar, see, which is the one reality, and the love and servitude to God, both are equally available. Okay.